That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about The Bikeriders, the sixth film directed by Jeff Nichols, which is being released courtesy of Focus Features on June 21st, 2024. Notably, it premiered at the 2023 Telluride Film Festival and was supposed to be released in December of last year, when I believe it was owned by 20th Century Studios, but the writers and actors strike had it paused, pushed back.
Do I know a Jeff Nichols film?
I don't think you do. 15, 16 years ago, he was a director that really excited me thanks to his first two films, Shotgun Stories and Take Shelter. He's also kind of the reason why Michael Shannon is notable, because Shannon was his muse and it's been in, I think, all of his films. But ever since then, I haven't really I didn't like Mud with Matthew McConaughey. I didn't love Midnight Special, and Loving, while it has two pretty damn good central or leading performances, I don't think was a very well-made film ultimately.
What is The Bikeriders about? After a chance encounter, headstrong Kathy is drawn to Benny, member of Midwestern motorcycle club the Vandals. As the club transforms into a dangerous underworld of violence, Benny must choose between Kathy and his loyalty to the club. That makes this movie sound a lot more cohesive than it is, but what is your pull quote?
A rose-tinted time capsule of Americana corrupted by the inevitable erosion of cultural shifts and intergenerational conflicts, Jeff Nichols is indebted to Tom Hardy in The Bikeriders for a glorious performance as a rebel without a pause.
Mine. This is the finely crafted, jumbled biker flick I didn't know I needed. I did really enjoy this movie.
I did too.
It's kind of a mess, though. It's all over the place.
It's trying to not be... I think it's trying to avoid seeming basic by doing that.
Sure. And it works because of some really charming performances.
I think
and characterizations.
The trio the trio leading characters are pretty good.
So the story, I mean, the premise I read is basically it's like the late 60s, early 70s, and so Kathy is played by
Jodie Comer.
So she's kind of like the narrator of the story. Mm-hmm. So we go back and forth a lot. But essentially, Tom Hardy plays this guy named Johnny, and Johnny started like a motorcycle club. So he's just like a regular dude in Chicago who has a bunch of friends, and they like to talk about motorcycles and presumably get away from their wives. So he came up with the idea of like, let's start a club. But it looks kind of like what we think of as a biker club, but these are not tough guys. However, Benny, played by Austin Butler, he joins the club, and he's definitely a wild child. And he ends up being the husband of Kathy. Mm-hmm. So she's telling the story of like how the club started and her husband. And she's telling this story to a guy who was part of the club, but was also like their in-house photographer.
I don't think he was actually part of the club.
No, but he was there for a long time, like years.
Yes, played by Mike Faist from Challengers and West Side Story. And he is, because this is based loosely on a photo book published in 1967 of the same name by Danny Lyon.
So the Challengers guy, his character is taking photos and recording interviews, and he's telling everyone, I think I want to write a book. So like you said, this movie is loosely based on the story of these people and the book. So we see that Tom Hardy starts the club, and everything's cute for a minute, but then of course, violence ensues, things happen, and ultimately the club grows. I'll get into the details, but the club grows, which causes problems because now some unsavory characters are members. And everything comes to a head when this younger guy, who we meet a couple of times prior, he wants to join the club. Mm-hmm. Do we know his name?
He's in the IMDb credits. He's the kid, but he's played by Toby Wallace, who you know from the Royal Hotel.
Oh,
he's the one.
I actually wrote him down as the kid, not knowing that's what they refer to him as. But he, at a point, he tries to join the club, and Tom Hardy tells him no. We'll get into it. But then he comes back a couple years later, and he is now a member of the Vandals, Tom Hardy's club, but in a chapter that's not in Chicago. So according to the rules, anyone can challenge Tom Hardy. So the kid shows up and says, I'm challenging you because I heard you're not running this spot like you should. And Tom Hardy says, okay, tomorrow meet me in the parking lot by the whatever. And the kid shows up, and it's supposed to be a knife fight. But the kid just walks up to Tom Hardy and shoots and kills him. So when the premise says like how this club sort of transforms into like a dangerous underworld, it's really not all that. We just see that after Tom Hardy gets killed, this biker club turns into a full-on gang. And we get like 90 seconds of them explaining that.
Yeah, and they try to imply that they become sort of like a cartel or the mafia even. But...
Yeah, which is like, okay. But then maybe like a year before that happened, Austin Butler's character ended up leaving not only the biker club, but his wife. And we'll get into why. But he ends up returning after he hears that Tom Hardy dies. And so he returns to his wife. And then they end up moving to Florida, and they have a peaceful life, and he's like a mechanic. The end.
So Kathy is providing the narration basically across two periods.
Yeah, 1965 and 1973.
And then Nichols likes to kind of flip-flop in between those, which...
So that's why I'm saying it feels jumbled, because the opening of the film is we see Austin Butler's character sitting in a bar wearing his Vandals biker jacket, and two guys walk up to him saying, like, you can't be here wearing those colors. So you either take this shit off or we're going to whoop your ass. And he's like, well, you're going to have to kill me because I'm not taking my shit off. And a bad fight occurs. But we only see part of it. Because in the opening, we see Austin Butler about to get hit in the head with a shovel. And then the midway point, we get the full story, which is that he got knocked out and they took that shovel and damn near amputated his foot. But then miraculously, he can walk again. We see that he has had surgery and he has to recover, but we don't really get a sense of like, it seems like he didn't take care of his foot, but somehow he still has it. But anyway, yeah.
It's interesting because in a certain sense it avoids the usual or the predictable rhythm that we probably could have, but it also avoids generating any real tension.
Because what ends up happening, I was kind of shocked in a way that was like, oh, I was not expecting this to end the way it did, because there is very little tension. Because it really just seems like a bunch of guys, like a bunch of white guys in the Midwest in the 60s who just want to like ride motorcycles and get away from their families. So then the fact that they end up being violent caught me off guard.
It almost feels like a slap on the face sometimes, because the rest of the film feels almost like gossipy, because it's Kathy going, oh, and do you know what happened to Cockroach?
Yeah. I'm just going to go through my notes. So, the trio would be Tom Hardy as Johnny, Kathy, played by
Jodie Comer,
and then Austin Butler as Benny.
And I don't think you did see her as a supporting character in The Free Guy, but if you'd seen Ridley Scott's The Last Duel, you'd be even more impressed by her performance here.
So, yeah, because I don't know who this lady is, but I really liked her. I thought she was super cute. She reminds me of Tina Fey, and she's doing this Midwestern accent that is full-on caricature. Her performance is almost camp.
Well, it's not far removed from Frances McDormand in Fargo, which is a performance I highly enjoy. But
I found her really cute and charming, so I enjoyed being with her for the 2 hours. Austin Butler is really nice to look at. He's almost transfixing. He's just brooding the entire time and smoking cigarettes. He's not really talking much, but I enjoyed that.
Well, if Tom Hardy's doing Brando, he's Jimmy Dean.
Yes. And then Tom Hardy is giving a performance that if he got nominated for some stuff, I would not be mad.
Yeah.
I thought he did a fantastic job. And his character is like inspired by not Tom Hardy playing the character, but the character of Johnny. He sort of like idolizes Marlon Brando.
In the Wild One.
So he kind of acts like him. So Tom Hardy acting as this guy wanting to be Marlon Brando is very effective.
And so strangely, I think the film's an interesting exercise because it's like, what would, if Brando and James Dean had ever done a picture, what would it have been like? But if this had been made during the new American cinema of the 70s, you probably really could have had Brando with somebody like a Michael Sarrazin and maybe Christopher Walken in the Michael Shannon role. But the triangle that is kind of suggested between the three of these made me think more of a really interesting Douglas Sirk film called The Tarnished Angels from '57 with Rock Hudson and Robert Stack as they're flying acrobats or something, and stuck between them is Dorothy Malone as a journalist.
Oh. So I think the opening is strong because we open with Austin Butler being assaulted, and then we sort of flash to Kathy being interviewed by the Challengers guy. What's his name?
Mike Faist.
Sorry.
I think his character's name is Danny.
Who I like too. And then we get the story of how Kathy and Benny met. And I thought she was so cute in telling the story. And then we find out that after she met, because then we see that she had a boyfriend at the time. And she stayed out, the first night Kathy met Austin Butler, she stayed out all night with him, like riding bikes. So when she comes home, her boyfriend is sitting outside mad. And then Austin Butler sits outside her house all night and all day. Like the boyfriend goes off to work. And when the boyfriend comes home, Austin Butler is still sitting outside in front of her house. So he gets mad and leaves the boyfriend. And that's how their relationship started. And then she says 5 weeks later, we got married. So I thought that was cute. Although, you know,
It reminded me of the song Leader of the Pack.
Oh.
How they first, the courtship.
So while I find the trio really charming and all of the sort of like bike club members were all, like they all had personalities and so I felt invested in them, the story feels very thin as far as like who these people are. Like, I don't know how Kathy pays bills because Austin Butler says he doesn't work.
Well, he can't pay his club dues.
Right.
Apparently.
So, but they live in like a house and somehow she's fine. So a lot of details are just like eliminated, I guess.
We don't really get to know that because there are a lot of notable people in the supporting roles, like Carl Glusman and Beau Knapp. Michael Shannon as Zipco.
Who's the California guy? I recognize him.
That's Norman Reedus.
Is he from like The Walking Dead or?
I haven't
or Game of Thrones or?
He's Boondock Saints is my go-to for him, but he might be in several.
I liked his. We'll get to his character. I liked him. So.
But Emery Cohen, I didn't recognize till almost it was over. Emery Cohen is playing Cockroach.
Oh, poor Cockroach. We'll talk about Cockroach.
You need to, because when was the film Brooklyn? Like 2015? Not that long ago. And
he looks very different?
Yeah, I did not know it was him.
But I liked Cockroach. So the club starts, so everything's all cute with the club at first, but then it starts to grow. And one of the members, Brucie, he says, or not Brucie, I'm sorry, some other guy. He asks, hey, I have some friends in like Milwaukee or something. They want to start a club. And Tom Hardy says no. And the guy is like, well, according to your rules, I can challenge you. So Tom Hardy says, okay, we can fight about it. So they fight and Tom Hardy whoops this man's ass. But then he tells them, tell your friends they can start the club. So he's basically like trying to establish dominance, but still trying to be a cool guy. And again, I think what was missing is all of these guys are so quick to fight, but then they're also presented like regular guys who just want to ride bikes. So I guess I'm missing like where that component in them comes from.
I think the script is trying hard to get to that, almost in a labored way, speaking to kind of the trials and travails, the trap of masculinity that they're all trying to overcome. And we get that in like Kathy talking about how men don't cry.
Sure.
And I think it's like how these men can relate to each other, and sometimes it's only through these kind of eruptions of violence are they actually getting to kind of expiate some emotions.
Okay. Michael Shannon's playing, I thought he was really cute in the film. But there's a point where he's just kind of like how would you even describe his character?
Seems like an old stoner. He seems burnt out.
Well, he's really like anti-pinko, which like he doesn't like liberals. And he tells a story about how his brother tried to go to college and he made his brother drop out because he said he's not going to have any family member go to college. They need to learn how to work with their hands. But I thought that character was really charming. Then we have Cockroach. Poor Cockroach. He's called Cockroach because he likes to eat bugs. And there are a couple of moments when he explains it that are funny. And then his wife is listening to him and she's embarrassed and walks away. But the ending to his story is kind of sad because when the club starts growing and then now they're letting in all these new members. And a big plot point is that after the Vietnam War, a lot of veterans have returned and they're joining the club and they're clearly suffering from PTSD and they have drug abuse issues. So the club has split.
Yeah, they have a different set of values.
So the original members are kind of like, they just like to hang out, drink beer, talk shit. But then these new members, they like to do drugs, smoke weed, and they're more violent. So one day at a big party, and this party is pretty significant because first, Cockroach is talking to some new members he doesn't know. And he's just being himself, like kind of happy-go-lucky. And he says, yeah, I'm going to become a bike cop. So I'm going to have to leave the club so I can go be a bike cop. But like, what's better than getting paid to ride a Harley? So he's totally sweet about it. And these guys are like, what? Because they're hardcore. Like the rules say, like, you can't just leave the club. So they badly beat up Cockroach. So Cockroach asks Tom Hardy for help. And Tom Hardy's solution is to basically like harm Cockroach. Like he shoots him in the leg and tells him to like vanish. Because he can't really protect him from these new members. So that was sad. That this thing that these guys sort of created to have like a safe place to enjoy a hobby turned into something so extreme. And I think the main reason I would say this is not a perfect film is because I think the magnitude of what transpired is not well represented in this movie.
Well, because I don't know if it's so clear that he's like we already mentioned, he's mimicking Brando, and they play the clip from The Wild One, that very famous clip where somebody asked Brando as that character what he's rebelling against. He says, "What do you got?" And it's like the title Rebel Without a Cause as well. It's like these angry young men with nowhere else to put their emotions, so they're lashing out, but at what? And it's also a way to come together. But these veterans that are coming back with all these issues do have a cause.
So prior to this, Tom Hardy had asked Austin Butler, like, I want you to take over the club. And Austin Butler's like, I can't do that. I'm not responsible. But then later on, when Tom Hardy has to shoot Cockroach, he has Austin Butler come with him. And then that's when Austin Butler's like, this shit is for the birds. And Austin Butler just leaves. So
one note about that scene, though, where he pulls him aside secretively. Tom Hardy pulls Austin Butler aside. That is one of the most romantic scenes between men that I've seen in a long time.
I wrote that down, and I wrote down that scene, I was fully expecting them to make out.
Oh.
Because there was a lot of... Well, I think because Tom Hardy has, like... I don't know. He has queer energy to me, and then Austin Butler's really, like, pretty. So then those two, and then it's dark, and Austin Butler is all over. I mean, Tom Hardy's all over Austin Butler in that scene.
Well, he's almost eclipsing him in the moonlight. And,
yeah, I was fully expecting them to kiss.
There are some emotions. There are some emotions between the words that are happening there that are fireworks, and I think it's part of that restraint which makes it seem so kind of sexually charged.
Well, even prior to that scene, Kathy acknowledges, like, you want my husband as much as I do.
Mm-hmm. Like she's like, I know you love him. Mm-hmm.
So, and I don't know that it was so much like, there's nothing gay about it. I think it's more like, because Tom Hardy's character says, I want you to take over the club because you're the only person the guys will respect because they all want to be you. Mm-hmm. Because Austin Butler's about that life. There's a scene where there's like a little scuffle, but it's all like between like some biker groups, and this is before the club gets a little too hardcore. And so they're like squabbling, but it's all like playtime. But then Austin Butler sees that Tom Hardy's squaring up with someone, And the way Austin Butler cuts into the scene and punches the guy was pretty great. But it shows that Austin Butler is like down to ride, literally. So I got the sense that Tom Hardy like idolizes Austin Butler for his like fearlessness and the fact that he's not preoccupied with like having a job and paying bills. So it's almost like a fantasy for him.
Yeah, he is almost a fantasy figure, and I think that maybe almost seems that way through the end.
But I often think a lot of straight men are like that and especially with like sports figures, because they seem so excited with all these big muscular men, like athletes. And I don't think it's gay. I just think that they worship them in that way. So that's how Tom Hardy seemed to look at Austin Butler. But getting back to the scene where Cockroach gets beat up at that party, there's also another really powerful scene because we see a woman dressed in a red dress and she's dancing, and Kathy is with her husband and the other guys.
Definitely not a Chris de Burgh moment.
What does that mean?
Lady in Red.
Oh. And then they're saying like, oh, you look so pretty in that dress. And then a few moments later, we see that the guys have the dress. And she's like, where's the woman who was wearing the dress? Oh, she went upstairs, took it off, and she wanted you to have it. Like, okay. So Kathy puts the dress on, but then everyone has to, like, Austin Butler, Tom Hardy, they all have to leave because Cockroach has been injured, so they have to go to the hospital. So they leave, and then these new members basically try to sexually assault Kathy because the word was the lady in the red dress is down to clown. And she is almost taken away when Tom Hardy pops up and stops it. So that was a very jarring scene.
It is, because their excuse, which is why Johnny relents, is that, well, it's just a miscommunication, the girl in the red dress. Whatever you heard about the girl in the red dress, she is saying no.
Right.
Adamantly.
So I'm just going to keep going through my notes. So we finally learned, like in the opening scene, that the fight was that Benny got hit in the head with a shovel, and then they take the shovel to chop off his foot. So it's almost nearly severed, but he has surgery done. But I think it's funny. He's told that he needs to like lay low for 3 months, like don't put any weight on it. But then Tom Hardy's pressuring Austin Butler to get back on the bike. And I just kept thinking, I'm surprised, because there's no mention of Austin Butler's foot
after that,
and then it seems like he's perfectly fine. I don't know how he healed, because they must have smoked 1,000 packs of cigarettes. Like, that's all he does is smoke cigarettes. I don't know how he healed. And then speaking of that, the range of dentisha in this movie, it's like watching, like, I don't know, like Planet of the Apes. Because some people, like Austin Butler, have a beautiful Colgate smile. And then some people, like the man from
Norman Reedus.
Oh my God. His teeth look like wormholes. I don't even know how to describe it. How would you describe his teeth?
They looked like he was rotting. He was rotting from the inside.
You know how those bad little kids have like the silver caps? If you rip those silver caps off, whatever's underneath, that's what his teeth look like.
It was giving Nightmare Before Christmas.
But you get the range, because Tom Hardy has bad teeth. Then the kid who kills Tom Hardy, his teeth are bad. It's just a wide range of teeth that I found really amusing. Speaking of the California guy, Norman Reedus, that scene where he shows up is really good, because they're having like a party in the park.
They're picnics.
And then all of a sudden, Norman, that's his name?
Funny Sonny.
He shows up and he looks like hell. He looks like a caveman with bad teeth. And he's like, oh, I'm from California, but I heard y'all are out here, and like, I'm hoping you'll let me stay. And he gives Tom Hardy money, like, respect. I just need a place to chill and eat. Okay, you can kick it with us. So they're all drunk. And I wrote down that all of the guys, because they're sitting by a campfire and they're all just talking shit, they were acting like in Gremlins when they get drunk. Remember that scene? That's how they were acting. And then they're like, California guy, why are you here? And he goes, oh, old boy over here. Do you recognize that actor? The one who...
Boyd Holbrook.
What do I know him from?
Oh, all kinds of things. I know you just rewatched The Predator, for one. The Skeleton Twins.
Anyway, Norman goes, oh, Boyd Holbrook over here? I'm here because he used to be a part of a bike gang in California. He never turned in his colors. So I'm here to kill his ass. And then the shit gets real tense. Mm-hmm. And then he's like, I'm just playing. I'm not going to kill him.
That feels like that scene in Bones and All when they run into Michael Stuhlbarg and David Gordon Green.
Oh, I actually remember that scene. It was very well done. Because even I was nervous. Like, no, don't hurt him. Y'all were having a good time. And it's also during that moment when Tom Hardy and...
proposes
to Austin Butler. Like, please take over. That was all very well done.
Yes. You mentioned Brucie, played by Damon Herriman. Oh. He has a sizable role. He's kind of the right-hand man.
Yeah, and I thought he was sweet. And his girlfriend looked like... I thought she looked like Asian Amy Winehouse. Her hair was crazy.
Yes, she had the beehive.
But poor Brucie ends up dying because he gets hit by... He's riding his bike and hits like a car that pulls out of a driveway. But the funeral scene's sad because Tom Hardy sends flowers and the family rejects it. I also thought that was kind of weak. We get no understanding of how anyone feels about the bike gang, except clearly Brucie's family didn't like it because they don't even want... The mother or the wife spits on Tom... Well, it must have been the wife or the mother. Spits on Tom Hardy. And then, of course, Kathy doesn't like that Austin Butler rides the bikes. But other than that, we really don't get a sense of...
We actually don't really get that much time between Kathy and Benny either.
Her husband.
After the courtship. So I don't really know what... Only when his foot is almost chopped off does she say, I think you should stop.
Yes. The scene where the kid... Oh, my God. So when we first meet the kid, he wants to join the bike gang. And... Well, first we see him with... He's a hooligan, like all dirty hooligan with bad teeth. And they're stealing hubcaps. And then he is building bikes. He goes to Tom Hardy and says, I want to join your club. And Tom Hardy's like, And then he tests him. He goes, well, you can join, but your friends can't. So the kid goes, well, F my friends.
Kick rocks.
And Tom Hardy's like, okay, you can't be in the club because what kind of, how could you just leave your friends like that? So then we don't see the kid again until later. And he joins the Vandals in a different section. But before that, we see him go home and he has a really abusive family life. His dad and mom fight. So there's a scene where his dad hits the mom and then the kid whoops his dad's ass. That scene was pretty good.
And then the mom
kicks him out.
It's like that scene in Barfly when Mickey Rourke tries to stop that domestic going on next door.
Yes, because then the mom is mad that the son stood up for her.
He reminded me... So Nichols is taking pains to show us this kid's backstory. So it was reminding me of... Is it an African proverb about the child rejected by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth? That's what he felt like to me.
It was shocking when the kid kills Tom Hardy because, I was not expecting that. Things got serious real quick and then the film just wraps up very quickly. We have to end the video, but what else would you like to say? I like how the film looks.
It's shot by Adam Stone, who's worked many times with Mr. Nichols.
I like the set design and the costume design because I did feel like I was in the 60s and early 70s.
David Wingo's score as well. Yeah, I went in with low expectations because, like I said, it's been a minute since I've really liked a Nichols film, and I think this is the best he's done since his early films.
What would you give it?
3.5.
I thought it was very good. I would give it 3.5 out of 5. Join us on Patreon and listen to our podcast. Bye.